Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Unmute Your Mic. Please note that this episode contains content that some people may find disturbing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host from Kansas City, Missouri. And today I have Mari with me. She's going to tell all of us how to say her full name correctly. And she is from Boston. I'm so excited to get to know her, to hear her story. Mari, thank you so much for agreeing to be on my podcast. If you could just let us know a little bit about you and we can get this thing started.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Well, my name is Maricelly. As you mentioned, I'm from Boston. I'm a mother of 4. I'm a domestic violence survivor, Amazon bestseller. I have a coaching program for women out of trauma. I am a domestic violence survivor and entrepreneur of a cosmetic line.
So you got a lot going on, right? That's and a
podcast. Yeah, I'm a mom.
And being a mom, that's already a full-time job. So that by itself. But I also don't want to skim over some of the other things you said. So you mentioned that, you are an Amazon bestseller. Can you talk a little bit about your book, what it's about, that kind of thing?
So my book is called Who Is She? It's right here. It's a story of trauma, survival, and healing. It's my personal experience with domestic violence. It's a memoir.
Wow, that's awesome. And so what made you decide to write the book? Was it used was it used like a healing mechanism, or would you just want to share your story with other people?
A little bit of both. I knew that I wanted to write my story. I just didn't know how. I didn't have that push or that right person to kind of motivate me to write it. I always had a journal, so I was always writing everything down. So I remember Clubhouse came out and I wrote on my bio, one day I'm going to tell my story. And I be talking in the rooms in Clubhouse. I met a book coach. She put me for the greatest. She pushed me to write it. And yes, in between, it was a lot of things, a lot of emotions, because you got to go back and kind of remember everything you went through. But it was actually really healing. It was part of my healing process. It was definitely, I got a lot of things that were on my chest for so many years. I had the opportunity to put it on paper.
I think that's awesome. And, I've talked to a couple other people who have said the same thing. Like when they're going through something, being creative, writing, poetry, books, that kind of thing, it really does work as a way to kind of help you heal. And I love that you said one day you're going to, share your story. Obviously, that is what my entire platform is about, because I think we can learn so much from the things that people go through. And, you saying that you're a survivor of domestic violence, that's a big deal, right? Because there are people who don't make it through that. So if you could just be, a little transparent and talk a little bit about what this journey has been for you, going through that and becoming a survivor of it.
I grew up in an abusive home, in a toxic environment. My father was really abusive to my mom for many years, till I can't even remember. At 15, I met someone who was 7 years older than me. I became pregnant at 15, had my first child at 16. He became controlling. Of course, he's 22, I'm 15. He got more maturity, more experience. He started controlling me. You can't wear this. You can't talk to your friends. You can't go out. Here I am, a 15-year-old. So basically, I'm going to do what he tells me to do. If my mother is not providing that safety in between us, at 18, I moved out. And that's when things got really, really bad. He started to hit me. Of course, he was hitting me before, but of course, not around really, he hit me a few times around my mother, but now it's just us. So now he got all the power to do whatever he wants. I spent 11 years. I had 3 children by him. After 11 years, it's not that I didn't learn my lesson. I found somebody who was worse. I spent 5 years with that person. And when I say worse, not only he abused me physically, but sexually, he abused my daughter. And that took me to a whole different, I mean, I was already mentally broken, and that just took me to a whole different world. You know, I ended up being an alcoholic, depression, suicidal thoughts. And for so many years, I asked myself, why me? And that's why I named my book, Who Is She? I just didn't know who I was. I didn't love myself. I didn't value myself. So it took me 3 different relationships to finally say, I'm done. So, you know, it was a long road. It took me a while to be here. And I thank God that I'm here.
And I think you said something really important there, is that it's not like you go searching for these things, right? But it's like sometimes in our upbringing, the things that we've seen growing up, we kind of find ourselves in a similar situation, and we don't always know how we got there. And so I thank you so much for being transparent, because that is not an easy thing to share. But I think the beauty in you sharing it is that you are not the only woman who has gone through something like this. You are not the only person who has been in multiple relationships that, you know, you look back on and you're like, oh my goodness, what was what was going on? And so what was it that what was that final straw in that last relationship that made you say, all right, this is enough. Like, I'm done with this.
You know, I was so shattered. My home was shattered. My children they were depressed. They were broken. My trauma was their trauma. I was so angry. And I was so furious that all the anger, I kind of just threw it at them. So even though that they didn't put me through certain situations, I kind of took it on them. So they were feeding from that negativity, that trauma, that depression. And now they're going through depression. Now they're going through suicidal thoughts. Now my children are being hospitalized. And I said, I can't do it anymore, because I'm going to lose my children. So I had to take care of my mental health first, because I couldn't help them out. In order for me, or if you to help somebody out, you got to be mentally stable. So I had to definitely do a lot of praying, a lot of mental help, a lot of talking, a lot of writing. And, you know, I'm not perfect, because I'm a work in progress, but definitely much better than yesterday.
And that's the beauty in it, that, you know, better than you were before, and every day improving, because none of us are perfect. And, you know, none of us can look at ourselves and be like, oh, there's nothing I want to change. But I love that you said that you had to start doing it for your children. So you had to find basically a why that was bigger than yourself. And so essentially, you know, that was what you were able to use to move forward. And I love that. And I think women need to hear that specifically. They need to know that, like, even in your darkest situations, you can pull yourself out, even if it's not easy, even if it seems impossible. And so I'm sure during these situations, there were times in which you wanted to give up. So why do you think you held on?
You know, I had many suicidal attempts. Many times I asked God, you know what, God, I love my kids, but I can't handle this anymore. I can't handle the pain, the crying, the no sleep, you know, the PTSD, the anxiety, looking at the window. Is he coming? Is it really going to burn my house down? Make sure my lights were on. So I didn't sleep for years. I was so scared of this person that he would definitely, I mean, he used to climb on my second floor window. So I used to just constantly look out the window and that, you know, that being afraid. And I was telling myself, I can't live like this. It's so unhealthy. I was so unhappy. And it took me years to understand you had to love yourself. You had to accept your past, work in your past, and just work in the near future. I can't focus on the past any longer. I just have to build a new future. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do now. And a lot of people judge women in domestic violence. Oh, well, why did you stay? Why you kept so many years with that person, or why you kept going back? It's not that easy. The trauma and the control that person has over you, it's like a ring in your finger. You don't take it off. So it's definitely challenging.
Yeah, and it's really easy for people to look at it and say, "Oh my goodness, I would never." That's such an easy thing to say when you're not in the situation. And
Correct.
especially when there are children involved, when there are, strongholds involved, when there's a big age gap, which is also really common too. You find it happening where the girls are a lot younger or they're maybe still teenagers and they're with somebody who kind of is almost like a parental figure, but they're doing all the wrong things. And so that's a lot of stuff to break off, and that's not something you can just be like, okay, bye, have a nice day. You've got to constantly be healing from that. And so what does the healing look like from the place that you're in now? How do you stay healed? How do you stay healthy? How do you keep your mind right?
The healing process is every day. It's not something. It's like an addiction, right? You can come back at any time. So you have to really be focused in something positive. A lot of reading, or in the morning affirmations. I make up my bed, I go for a walk, and kind of live that positive environment and have positive people around you. You really have to want to change, and you have to have a lot of positive people around you that's going to support you.
Yeah.
Because when I was trying to heal, I just didn't know where to start. Because when you live an abusive relationship, it's like you're being born again, right? And that's why I put in my book, it's like a baby learning how to walk. I had to learn how to be a better mother, a better person, a better self. I had to learn how to respect myself, love myself. So it was a long process. And yes, I got challenges that I still struggle with, because it's a struggle. The PTSD is no joke. I can go out and you think, oh my God, someone's walking behind you and they think they're going to hurt you. So that's something that I struggle with sometimes. Okay, it could be a family member. Why are you behind me? Don't do that. So I had to tell myself they're not going to hurt you. Everything's going to be okay. This is your safe space. They're not here. So the more you tell yourself that something's going to happen, it's not going to happen, you start to believe it. So is that constant reminder to yourself, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine as somebody who, I personally haven't experienced that. And so I couldn't imagine the mental strength that you have to have every day to wake up and keep pushing and be a better version of yourself. And I think I love the fact that you have a book, right? Because I think that is such a full circle moment to be able to say all these things happened to me, whether any of it, like, I think one of the biggest things that I want people to know is that it's not their fault when they're in these situations, because I think the world will just start pointing fingers, like you said, well, you stayed, well, you did this, well, you did that. And so that leads me to wanting to ask you, like, do you think there are some common misconceptions that people have about people who are survivors of domestic violence?
Oh, absolutely. I think that they really think we enjoy being there. I think someone told me one time, it's like an addiction that you love, and I'm like, no, it's definitely not. You really think, there's many people who stay, whether it's financially, whether it's because of children, it's because they have nowhere to go, or they're really scared. So I always tell people, if you're not walking in somebody's shoes, don't judge. We don't want to get abused. We don't want to get bitten. We don't want to get dragged. We don't want to get smacked. And this is the reason, if you see my book, you see those two hands that's wrapped around with a rope. That's exactly how we feel. And we try to break the cycle, but it's just so hard because they're controlled. And sometimes you do love them. Underneath it all, you have like this love for that person that takes over.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people need to understand too, is that it's not just a physical stronghold, but it's a mental one as well. And I think if more people understood that, they would be more sensitive to the situation, and more sensitive to kind of helping people who they know are in these kind of environments. Because I do know I had friends who've experienced this, and it was on the outside looking in, you don't always understand.
Right.
It's just like, girl, just leave, but like, and having deeper conversations, it was like, oh, this is, the same way other people can struggle with something else. Maybe it's an addiction or something where they're like, I don't want to be addicted to this, but I don't know how to stop. And I think that's what is important about your story. And so, as you said, you went through a couple of relationships. So now, do you find yourself dating, wanting to date? What is that? What does that look like for
You
you?
know, I got really high expectations now. I know what I'm value. I know what I deserve. Okay. So even if I'm just giving you my number, you better feel blessed. Okay. And I'm so focused in helping others at the moment. You know, I'm currently, getting a divorce. So right now I'm just so focused on me and my house and my children. I'm not saying if God want to bless me with an amazing person, I might want to get to you, but my expectations, my standards are so high right now because I value myself and I respect myself. I no longer tolerate, even if it's just a small little comment or just the smallest thing, I'd be like, that's a red flag. Before I didn't listen to my red flags. I live for my red flags now. So it's definitely be aware of the red flags because we normalize toxic relationship now, right? That's the new thing. My toxic, you got to stop being normalizing that because toxic becomes abuse. And these young women don't know that toxic is abuse. And when I hear a lot of women or even young girls, yeah, I'm just a toxic girl and my boyfriend is so toxic and he's so cute. That's mental and emotional abuse. We got to stop normalizing that.
If you're just now tuning in to this episode of Unmute Your Mic, I'm currently talking to Mari, and she is from Boston. We are talking about her surviving domestic violence, her book, her makeup line, and just how she is overcoming and helping other women. So please continue to listen and be inspired. No, that's real because I think social media and even just this younger generation, we use certain words and make them
Yes.
trendy without actually realizing, like, hey, what are you saying if somebody is toxic? Like, to me, toxic is just like poison. Don't want to be around, don't want to associate with, you're going to ruin my life. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing cute or trendy about that. But I think you also brought up a really good point about red flags because me, as somebody who's been divorced as well, when you look back on something, you realize, wow, there were a lot of red flags that at the time, whether because I was in love or because I was lonely or whatever the reason was that made us, enter it into the first place, we have to get to that place to where we're seeing the red flags beforehand. And so speaking on that, what are some of the red flags that you believe women should look out for as far as, men who maybe have the potential to be abusive, not just physically, but emotionally as well?
Sometimes a tone of voice, the way they speak to you, that tone is so important. We can communicate without you being assertive. Oh, he's just assertive. We don't got to be assertive. We adults. There's a tone that they use to start controlling you, to put that fear in you. And I remember the second abuser, that tone of voice. I still remember like it was yesterday. I used to be so scared because he wanted this authority to control me. And they are taking bomb. They start, screaming at you, calling you their names, pushing you, dragging you, and then just a ticking bomb. Boom, they exploded. Just a tone of voice, watch how they speak to you. Watch how they treat their own friends and themselves. Because an abuser got to respect themselves, their values. There's certain things that they do. And a lot of them, you might think that, wow, he's a perfect guy. As for me, when I met my second abuser, wow, but then I knew the red flags, the tone of voice, the way he used to get close to me to talk to me and kind of put that fear with his eyes. He wanted me to be scared of him, and he worked. So it's definitely look for those red flags, the tone of voice, the way they look at you, the way they treat their friends, their parents, themselves. Or look I be digging everything now. Dig their past. You can Google them. I Google everybody now. Definitely, you're not being a stalker, but you have to be safe. Research, definitely now. We didn't have that back in the days. We do now.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. The internet has its pros and its cons, but when it comes to like when you just meet somebody, I mean, why not? Because you never know what's gonna pop up. People be having 2 and 3 Facebook pages and all kinds of stuff. You're like, who is this? With the same picture and a different name. Like, and we're laughing, but it's if you get in that situation, it's extremely scary because you may not know who you're even dealing with in the first place. And I like that some of the red flags you pointed out are not common red flags. I think sometimes women can think that like an abuser is going to just like come up to you and do something aggressive day one of meeting them. And it's like that obviously wouldn't happen because then you would leave. Like there'd be no investment. You wouldn't be in
Right.
love. You wouldn't, like, if somebody does something on the first day, you pretty much are like, okay, you're crazy. So they have to kind of reel you in, gain that trust, but also gain that control. And so I think tone of voice, I think is something that's huge.
Yeah.
Even my mom used to tell me all the time, like, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And there's a way in which you can say something to where you're like, to where, it kind of does place a fear in somebody. And so, going a little bit back to your book, you said the book was, it was basically talking about your life. But what are some of the takeaways you would want people to have after reading your book?
You're going to learn how to overcome trauma, how to love yourself, how to find that value, how to find that voice. There's many women voiceless out here. And when you read my book, you're going to learn how I found my voice, how I overcame trauma, how I identify my triggers, how I manage my triggers. Sometimes I couldn't be peaceful at my own home. I had to find that peace in my home because the PTSD was just constantly there. So I had to find that peace again. So I read a lot about my book, PTSD, identify your triggers, overcoming trauma, and how to find that voice and that self-love all over again. Because when you leave that abusive relationship, you had to find yourself again. So what now? Many years of abuse, what do I do now? You got to reconnect with yourself. So I kind of say, how to reconnect with yourself all over again.
And after so many years of being silent, how did you start finding that voice?
Oh, I don't take anything now. In my marriage, I was angry when I first started with him, but then I became not assertive, but I'm no longer scared to tell you how I feel in a way where I don't have to hurt your feelings. I know how to walk away, right? Sometimes when they know certain triggers about you, they kind of poke the bear. I know she's going to get mad. She's a ticking bomb, right? She's been through all this. So if I say certain things, I'm going to get her mad. So it's kind of controlling your emotions, controlling yourself. Because yes, there's certain people that's going to trigger you, but you have to tell yourself it's not even worth it. So once you find that inner voice, you're going to find that voice. It's all about the inner voice. Your outside voice is your inner voice.
And I'm noticing a lot of what you're saying is really, just like you said, figuring out who you are and finding you again. I love the analogy that you use, that you said, like in your book, it's like you almost are being reborn and having to like relearn and figure out, how you navigate and how everything works with you. But I think that's so good because so many women, need to be in a place where we know who we are without somebody first, so that we're not letting somebody come in and define us. And so did you think that happened to you early on, where you were like letting other people kind of define who you were?
Absolutely. I was finding validation in this relationship. I was trying, instead of being happy by myself and being happy for who I was, I needed someone else to make me happy. And I think that's the reason I couldn't be alone, because I was looking, for happiness in the wrong places. And that validation, I think I started so young. I didn't have time to be a teenager. I didn't have time to do all these fun things and kind of enjoy life. I basically, boom, you're 15, relationship, you have a baby, you have a baby, you have a baby. Everything just happens so fast. And when I wrote my book, I it's like a butterfly, right? Like the metaphor of a butterfly. That's how my life was again. Little, you're born, you start walking. It's just little, but it's like a baby all over again. So it's a reborn. And that, I have a cosmetic line. Actually, one of my palettes called Who Is She? And the other one is called Reborn. So definitely it's like, starting new all over again.
I love that. And I even love the fact that you have the cosmetic line, because just having to do with feeling beautiful, being beautiful, feeling your best self. And let's talk a little bit about that. What made you start that? How long have you had it? Where can people purchase it?
I started about a year ago. I remember that second abuser used to kind of make me feel ugly, right? He used to make me feel so less. And, there were times where he used to make me look like the women he was cheating on. I wrote that in my book. So there were times when he said, you got to wear this, right? Because this is this. And I'm like, okay, my friend, she, at that time, she was like, well, there's makeup. If you go to this store, they'll teach you how to do makeup. And I kind of love like that. Like, I'm already beautiful without it. but it just makes you feel a little bit more like fierce, you know, when I have my lashes on, and it just give it an extraness, right? So in July of last year, I started with lashes, right? You know, there's a pandemic and things like that. And I named the Lash Queen because I was just going to sell lashes, right? Lash Queen, I'm going to be the queen of lashes. But then people kept asking me for more and more. And I started with lip glosses, and I started with palettes, makeup brushes. So it's definitely, I always tell people, makeup doesn't define you, right? It just helps you boost that confidence. That confidence is everything. And trust me, you know, I just had a segment on my podcast about self-care. Hygiene is so important. Your face, your self-care, your hair, everything's so important. So definitely, you know, my brand is all about boosting your confidence.
And I think a lot of that is tied into finding yourself and loving yourself. Because, you know, when people are unhappy or depressed or living in that kind of state, you don't find them always caring so much about themselves. You know, that's not your priority. Sometimes you're just trying to hold yourself together for that day. You're not thinking about, you know, doing your makeup and all that stuff. So I think that it's beautiful that you kind of have both tied together, because it's like, you know, you have this book talking about all the things that you've gone through and how you found yourself. And then this little extra thing on the top that's like that extra feeling of just like, I'm beautiful and I'm already beautiful. But this is just that, you know, I'm really putting that self-care, and I care about myself and how I look. And then you're not doing it to like catch somebody, but you're just doing it so that you can feel beautiful and confident within yourself. And I love that.
You know, confidence takes you a long way. You know, when you walk into that room, it could be 20 other people, but you're going to feel like I'm here, right? And you're going to look at me. Yeah. So that confidence, you know, I always, you know, I teach my daughter confidence is everything.
And then speaking on your daughter, I wanted to ask you about what does motherhood look like now? Like from this new place, from you being more healthy and healed, how has, you know, motherhood changed for you?
Well, you know, I had established a new relationship with them, right? Because it was broken. So I'm taking it really slowly. It's very fragile. Definitely in a much better place, but very fragile, because not only am I taking care of myself, but I know I'm taking care of them. So now, you know, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, you know, they're teenagers, you know, I have a toddler, but, you know, I'm cool with them. You know, I try to be all hip with them and things like that, and build memories and kind of do things differently. And that confidence, you could see it in them, because when you see them, you see me. So, you know, if you hear my daughter speaks, you know, I can see that confidence, and it makes me feel so happy that I'm able to share that with her. She's like, you know, Mom, you taught me how to be a hustler and a hard worker and a confidence. And that's amazing, because I don't want them to make it, you know, to grow up with that weakness or being abused or settling for less. So I definitely try to push that confidence.
That's beautiful. And they're getting to see you from the healed place. They're getting to see their mother, you know, like you said, being a hustler, being the entrepreneur, but loving yourself and also helping other people. I think it's amazing. It's going to really create a ripple effect in your children, whether they choose to do the same thing you do and write books, or whether they're just, you know, entrepreneurs in general. I think you're really placing some very important seeds inside of them. And that's beautiful, because that's the best gift I think that you can give a child, right? It's just being the best version of yourself and being as healed as you can be and showing them that. And so it has been great to have you on my podcast. It has been beautiful to hear your story, but I did want you to take a minute and just speak to somebody who's listening. Maybe there's a woman who has had a similar experience as you, and she doesn't know where to go. She doesn't know who she is or how to find herself. Can you just take a minute to encourage her?
You know, I always tell all my women who are either currently in a, you know, abusive cycle or coming out or is out, it's not your fault. It's never your fault. Everything's going to be okay. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Just give yourself a chance to open up and heal and start fresh. Yes, for everybody's different, but you do have an opportunity. And if life gives you an opportunity to survive abuse, take it. Because a lot of women didn't make it. So if you do have an opportunity, don't take it for granted. Take it as an opportunity to help yourself, to help other women, and grow. Grow from it, because an opportunity, but the opportunity is to grow and be better.
Mari, thank you so much. You're truly beautiful inside and out. Your
Thank
story
you.
is beautiful. And I want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. I'm going to put all of her contact information down below, all the links for her book, her makeup. Please support her. Reach out to her if you would like to talk to her. Mari, you also have a podcast as well, right?
Yes, my soul's to yours. And I forgot to mention, if you're in need of resources for any domestic abuse, I have them on my website.
Great. And that was another thing I was going to say as well. I will list some resources and just everything down below. Please stay connected. Mari, thank you again for being so transparent.
Much. Blessing.
Sharing your story. It was truly an honor. I thank you for everybody for listening again to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. As always, you can find us at unmuteyourmic.org. We're also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you find a podcast. Continue to be bold, be heard, and unmute your mic. Thank you again, Mari.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our communities.